For consistency, this is we're resuming the Senate's Public Utilities, Transportation, and Communications Committee called on February 20th, and we recess until February 26th, which brings us to this morning, and we also agreed to resume at 9:30. So we're right about there. With consideration with the order of business, I'm going to yield to the parties that are here to meet with the Senate. But before that, I would go ahead and formally recognize the members that are joining us today. To my left is Senator Manny Gregory Tenoro Castro. And to my right is Senator Francisco Q. Cruz. And also appearing via Zoom is Senator Ronnie Calvo. He's unable to join us in person today as he is in Rota. Also, Senator Corina Magofnia will be joining us momentarily once she's done with the engagement right around the same time at 10. So, and along with that, we also have our LB staff assisting the committee. To my left, Anthony Gomez, the Senate Legal Counsel. And to my right is David D. Mapan. He's the fiscal analyst for the Senate. And these gentlemen over to my right, starting with Sergeant at Arms Ben Terlay, and Mr. L.J. Castro is responsible with making sure that we get the photos and all the updates on social media. Thank you, L.J., and among other things. And Mr. Delbert Kamatsu, who is the IT that is manning all the electronics here. Thank you. So with that, welcome back, Chair Janice and Chair Mr. Wallerman, and all your key staff and management staff. I do want to ask if are we good to discuss the number 3 item, or we're good? So if you might please just come on up to the the seats there, and if you're going to share any comments, kindly press the button there, and once you are red, you are hot, meaning it's on. Thank you. Go ahead. I recognize Janice.
Good morning, Chair and Senators. Half a day in Tito. So I have with me Board of Directors, CDEC Chair Frank Reboliman, and also Director Miranda Manglonia in the galley. And online, I have Director Simon Sanchez, and from Guam, and from the island of Tinian, we have Director Paris online. So we're on number 3. It's the DEP agreement between CUC and the CDA. And I will have Mr. Kevin Watson and CFO do a summary of this, and then we can yield over to the CDAC chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Janice. But before I do that, I do want to, for the record, there is a letter from the acting executive director / comptroller, Mr. Derek Sasamoto, that submitted to the committee to pretty much kind of did an overview of what really this agenda is reflecting. And for the record, it is the 2009 preferred stock agreement between the CUC and CEDA. So instead of what is referenced on the agenda, it's actually almost synonymous to that. So he's correct. So I recognize Mr. Watson.
Hello, Senate and Chair. Well, thank you for having us here. And we'll be covering the next 3 items: the debt agreement between CUC and Commonwealth Economic Development Authority, matters associated with the Agreco temporary power lease, and challenges associated with the CUC power generation. And with me today, I have some of my staff, Betty Talahi, CFO, Yvonne, and Richard Tano. Can you stand up, Yvonne? And Richard? And John Moffis is also here. Thank you, and looking forward to today's proceedings.
Mr. Watson, you yield back your time.
What was that?
Did you yield back? You're done.
Yeah, I'm good
Okay.
now.
I'm sorry, I kind of misunderstood him. Now, go ahead and open. I guess Chairman Frank Rebaliman, do you want to cover some of the, the meat of the discussion, basically, if you wish to do so? Please proceed. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, good morning. And yes, thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to address the committee. This is regarding the dividends that was forged between CUC and CEDA. And I'm glad, Mr. Chair, that Chairman, that you pointed out that we had submitted a comment. I don't want to, further elaborate on that. I hope that the members were able to read through it, but I just want to point out some stuff. And the reason why we took it upon ourselves to make some comments is because we've had in previous legislatures, we've had attempts to do away with the dividends, and in fact do away with the whole entire obligation, which is of course it's problematic for CEDA, and it sends a very wrong message to everybody that being prudent and responsible financial what do you call this? Geez, I'm blacking out here, but essentially the one particular attempt in the last legislature was the public law, or not public law, but the House Bill 23-52, which attempted to write off the whole obligation for this CUC to CEDA, and that's why we took it upon ourselves to make these comments to this body, simply because we are somewhat weary that perhaps that's why it was on the agenda, and not to further mold the point, but I think it's important that you guys are informed as to the CEDA's side of this whole dividend obligation thing. So in that regards, I just want to point it out that doing away with this obligation, and Mr. Chair, I'm somewhat conflicted because I sit on the board of both CEDA and CUC. So, and this happens to be a CUC meeting as well. So I had hoped that our executive director would be here to present our case, but unfortunately he's not. So, but be that as it may, you have the written comments that we had submitted at the last meeting. In that sense, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman Rebaliman. Appreciate that overview of such. And I'm just referencing the letter. No, I didn't even know about 23. House Bill 23. So, I mean, there's no preemption whatsoever with regards to any attempt to write off. So, just for consistency purposes. So, basically, what we wanted to hear to be informed as to how this thing pan out, and potentially some questions may be arrived as a result of the presentation this morning. But unless I hear it or see it, somewhat similar bill from the 22 legislature, for the record, I haven't seen any, or there's no there's no attempt to do just that. So I recognize Chair Janice.
Thank you, Chair. In regards to the CDEC loan, or I would say a grant that started back in 1988 from a grant from CEDA, I would like to, because up to present, we have paid 9.9 million to CDA or CEDA, right? And for historical purposes and the summary of this infrastructure loan, I guess, to CUC from CEDAC,
Yeah.
I will yield to our CFO who has the depth knowledge and has the institutional knowledge in regards to the revolution of that loan from CEDAC. I will yield to Ms. Betty Terlahi.
Thank you, Chair Tenorio. Before I recognize Ms. Terlaya, can I just go for a short recess, please? Meeting. I recognize Mr. Lai, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Senate Committee Chair and PUTC Chair and members of this committee. I don't have all the depth knowledge right now because this goes way back 36, 7 years maybe. I do know that the chair is correct. This started off with an infrastructure loan in 1988 that CDA had granted to CUC, I believe in the amount of 50 plus million. And then subsequently a year later, an additional 16 some million for sewer and wastewater. I think the 1988 loan was for the electric side power generation. And then subsequently another 16 million the following year, and then 5 million on the third year, by 1990. So it totaled up about over 70 some million in loan money for infrastructure development of the utility. The repayment process was, I guess, difficult for CUC over the years. And so in 2002, the talks began about issuing perhaps a preferred stock over for CEDA, and so that negotiation started, and it wasn't. There were agreements in 2002 and in 2004. For whatever reason, it dragged a little longer because it also required legislation for the approval of those transactions. The approval did come in around, I think, 2005 or 6, but then the preferred stock was not issued till 2009. Therefore, it's called the 2009 preferred stock with between CUC and CDA. In 2009, there were in the agreement, it was to delay payments for 3 years to allow CUC to financially recover, as that followed shortly after the load shedding that CUC was going through. So there was no extra income to pay for the loans. So part of the agreement was to delay the payments for 3 years. And then the 3 years worth of payments was to be amortized over 15 years following that. and so we'd include a portion of it in each of the each of the dividend payments that we would make, CUC would make. The preferred stock was issued at 45 million shares with a 2% flat payout of the total accumulated preferred stock value. And so that came out to be about 900, 800 something. And with the amortization of the 3-year delay, it was an additional 200 some. So each year we have to pay 1,080,000 to CDA. And we pay that in quarterly installments. We pay that in quarterly installments of 270,000 in advance, meaning in the beginning of the quarter. And so we've made a total payment of, and I correct the amount, Chair read 9.9, it's 9.18, 9,180,000 that we've paid to date. Our last payment was on January 8, which is for the second quarter of fiscal year 2025. So in March, we would be due for the third quarter. And so this is, and the law and the agreement, back and forth, I'm not sure which one, but is that the dividends that we pay would go back to CEDA into a special account for it to be used primarily for infrastructure. And so I believe as of last year, when the House was considering, how to help CUC out, how to get the rates to stay low or bring it down, this was one of the considerations, was that the dividends would be returned back to CUC to be able to fund the engines that it needed, so that we could be more efficient and we could bring down the cost of fuel that we pass on to our customers. So that was one of the discussions that we heard was going to happen. And, and we heard other things too, like it could offset what was owed by CHC. It could offset what the government owed, different topics. But at the end of the day, it didn't go through. I believe that the governor ended up needing about the amount that CEDA had in dividends at the time to pay for the retirees' 25% pension. So that's the reason why that bill didn't get through the floor, because I believe that the money was then loaned to the government for the retirees' pension. And I believe that agreement requires the government to pay back to CEDA the 7-point-something million that was borrowed. So at the end of the day, the money sits in CEDA to be used for infrastructure. And I know one of the recent appropriations that was done with the CEDA dividend payments that we made, was to fund the NMC, I believe, water and sewer line, which is infrastructure. It doesn't dictate what type of infrastructure, but my plea would be that if the preferred stock was transferred back to CUC or dissolved in a way, that we be required to spend our 1 million on infrastructure. It kind of serves the same purpose. But we're paying CEDA, and CUC doesn't have a say on where the money goes and what infrastructure it goes to. And that's about, it's and the dividends are passed on. The cost of the dividends are passed on to our customers, because we have to recover our cost of business, and that is one of them. So it is an old loan. The intent was for infrastructure, and it still is. The money's been borrowed, so it's not there anymore, but not right now. And I don't know when it will return back. That would take some time, as we all know that the government is struggling with their funds as well. But we continue to pay CEDA 270,000 every quarter, 1,080,000 annually, and it sits in an account. At this point, we probably need to work with our CEDA chairman to determine how the funds can be used. But if at the end of the day it's returned back to CUC, you know, I think we'd be okay if it was returned back with restrictions that it must be used for infrastructure. There is a provision in the agreements that for every dollar we spend on infrastructure, we could reduce the preferred stock. I mean, it would be an offset to what the preferred stock value is. At this time, we've had a lot of infrastructure investments coming from EPA, ARPA, DOI, other grantors. And so that makes, those are not allowed to offset the preferred stock value. But if we have to use 1 million on infrastructure, there are so many other projects that we could do to help the community. We didn't get approved for the Astralahi Olyai collapsed sewer lines that we wanted to use the remaining ARPA money we had for. We didn't get approved for that. So that's now something we have to identify funding for. And there's just a big list of a lot of infrastructure. And these are infrastructures that we inherited. It wasn't necessarily first built by CUC. And so the cost to replace these, the needs that we have out there to keep the community service with water and sewer lines is significantly high, especially today when all the prices have gone up, triple, quadruple. So whatever the Senate decides, they can help how they could help us in this regard, because it would require legislation. I think, if it's for the same purpose, I don't see how CETA would oppose it. Of course, I'm not CETA, but I would plead with our CETA chairman to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lai. And wow, that's I was just looking at you. You're not even looking in your notes, and you're just going through the history of that. That's pretty impressive, in my opinion. But I just want to remind the members that again, this meeting format is an informational gathering hearing. It's not in any shape or form oversight. So we're going to gather the information of what presented based on the approved agenda, and then if we have a specific questions that need clarification, we can schedule another FaceTime or another portal. But certainly appreciate the history. I can see Chairman Rebaliman looking at you, and but so again, members, please focus yourself on the informational gathering of this meeting this morning. Is there any other, Chairman?
I just want to say that CUC is very current on its payments with regards to this obligation, unlike many other agencies out there.
Chairman Rebaliman. So,
If I
Mr.
may, I just want to correct it. There is no loan. There is no promissory notes or debt to CDA other than their utility bills they owe us. But because it was truncated by the issuance of preferred stock. So
Okay.
people still think we have a debt to CUC. What it is really dividends that we pay.
CEDA, you mean?
Yes, for
Debt-
CETA, correct.
Debt CEDA. Okay,
For
so
CEDA.
strike that out on the agenda. Where it's not a debt.
It's not a debt, correct?
yeah.
Correct, Senator.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Lai. And before I recognize, I want to open up the floor and ask Senator Cruz to pose his question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Chair and members of the board, CFO and Executive Director. Thank you for the continuation of this meeting. I want to completely understand that the dividend that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned that there's a discussion to return back the dividends to CUC to. Is that to stay within that rate or to reduce the rate? I'm sorry, I didn't get it earlier. And how much was that dividend that returned back?
To clarify that was a bill that was supposed to be introduced in the
But
in
that
the
dividend
House.
haven't been returned
No,
to.
it never went
So the
through.
proposal is to return that.
to return the dividends to be used for infrastructure.
For
And
CUC.
so, yeah, like we could buy a new engine
And
for the power plant.
yes.
But in the first bill that was introduced on the floor, my understanding was that they also considered it to forgive the debt that CUC owes. And so even CEDA came in and said that law is not going to work because there's no debt that's owed to CEDA. It's actually a preferred stock and we pay dividends. So the second amendment was to convert it to say that the preferred stock would be transferred back to CUC, including the dividends that have accumulated that are still with CEDA. At the time, it was like 7.5 million approximately. Unfortunately, it was then borrowed by another bill to pay for the retirees. So until it gets returned, then we can probably talk about returning dividends.
Okay. Thank you, CFO. Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Are you for now?
Thank you, Senator Cruz. Any questions from Senator Calvo, if you are online? Senator Castro, you have any? Recognize.
Thank you, Chairman. I actually don't have any questions, more of a comment. I just want to thank you for all that you do. Chairman Rebaliman, it's kind of hard to wear both hats and a little bit of conflict there, but I just wanted to find out, a lot of these investments are going through government agencies. This question is more to CEDA. If we can look at things like a green bank, like the state of Hawaii has, focus on at-risk populations like the low-income community. So we have like a program like LEHAP to just pay their CUC bill, but in Hawaii, what they've done is they've looked at the most at-risk population, and they instituted a green bank that can help finance renewables and give more control to the small businesses, to the residents, to kind of reduce their rate, their power consumption. So not to eliminate CUC, but to help. Whether it be a solar water heater or solar AC unit. So more of a micro level. You have a really good micro loan program, but something more for the population. I know we're used to the government having control of everything, but in states where they've worked individually with homeowners and we might want to look into those programs that are really helping the most disadvantaged and study them. So that's just if the board has time to see like other jurisdictions what's working, and meanwhile while the bigger corporations doing its thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Castro. Before I pose my question, I think I want to recognize fiscal analyst Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone, especially to CUC delegation and CEDA, Mr. Rebalman. Basically, my question is basically to point out that in the letter from CEDA, they indicated that the year-to-date dividend payments is $13.5 million. It's shown on the first page of the letter in the last sentence. But then in your statement, Ms. CFO, you're stating a different amount. Just want to point that out, and perhaps you guys can reconcile your numbers. And then the other one that I might have to ask, do you recall in your record, in your books as to date, how much exactly were written off during back from 1988 all the way up to the present about this issue of loan defaultment? Just want to clarify that. Thank you.
I can provide that data when we get it back. There was an amount that was forgiven because, as you see, the loan was in the 70 millions, 70, almost 80. and the shares was converted to 45. So there was a difference.
I believe that was discussed in the letter. How much was written off?
Any other comments from CUC or CEDA? No?
I do know that CEDA also forgave the 16 million that infrastructure because of for the water and sewer infrastructure projects. That one was waived.
Okay. So, thank you for information, Madam Chair and both respective chair. If I may request for, if there is any, if I haven't, I don't think I have a copy of, or if I do, then I forgive my ignorance. But can you just provide the committee as much information with regards to this, like even the 2009 preferred stock, or just for record purposes, no, to perhaps guide us moving forward. And in the event that there is such legislation coming down the pipes, we can potentially, I mean, it can help us ask the right questions or make the informed decision. No? As I can see that this is a concern that was raised, on records. We want to be able to assist in such a way that it doesn't impede one agency to another in case of this particular item. I do want to just ask one question, perhaps to CUC. Can you take us through the dividend exchange? And I know that we passed a legislation up here. And I'm probably going to ask Dave Dimapon to enlighten the committee chair with regards to that payment. Did I hear 25%, or is it the loan to another entity? Did you mention something that the dividend or the proceeds was used recently? Just for
Yes, I
consistency.
believe most of it was borrowed for the 25% retiree pension payout that the governor paid last year.
Last fiscal year.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
Okay, that's good information. Dave, please make note of that so that, because we just recently passed the revised budget for 2025, of which 30-something million actually was advanced for this fiscal year. So I'm interested to see. Oh, by the way, I'm actually talking about the fiscal. I also chair the fiscal Senate, so it's gonna work hand in glove. So unless any other member have any question to the panel, Senator Cruz, recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to find out whether that 25% I know that was passed here of the legislature to cover the 25% the retirees pension, right? That money that is coming from that comes from that dividend, and that's supposed to be that's part of the covenant agreement between the federal and CEDA, right? I mean, that time I was CEDA to
Yes,
for investment money, right?
yes. It was to be restricted for infrastructure only.
So passage of that legislation to subsidize 25% is actually not appropriate.
It's definitely a concern for CUC.
I just want to completely understand that because, as much as possible, I want to stick my finger in signing in something that is not and to be ready to respond to the concerned citizen.
Yes, you're
So-
right. I would yield to the attorneys to maybe perhaps
Thank you.
review that
Thank you, Mr.
legal
Chairman.
matter. Yeah, thank you.
This is Osmasi, Senator Cruz, and I don't have any other comments with regards to this agenda. So please, we'll just take a 2-minute recess so that, I think Mr. Balaman, you're going to have to leave, right? So, okay, thank you so much, Chairman Frank Balaman, for your presence this morning. Certainly appreciate it. And anytime and every time that we please feel free to call on us if there's any concerns or recommendations. So we're going to take a 2-minute break. Thank you. We're back in session. We are through with item 3. That's the discussion between CUC and the. Let me make sure that I say it right. The preferred stock agreement item between CUC and CEDA. So moving on, item 4, matters associated with the Greco. And for the viewing public that are not aware what this is the private company that's providing power generation to service primarily the island of Saipan. So at this time, the chair recognizes Executive Director Watson for this item.
Yes, thank you. The Greco contract has been in place over 5 years. It comes to an end this May 2025, and it can't be renewed. It's already met the requirements that are set for how long and renewals can go for. And so we had to prepare another bid, which is being released today. And this is for temporary power of 12 megawatts. And more information to be shared by Richard Cano and John Moffis. It's for so we can meet all of the demand for the power and CNMI, and also allows for much needed maintenance. So a unit can be brought down for maintenance, and we still have the capacity to meet the demand for the power. And as I stated there, it is being released today, and there's a pre-bid meeting scheduled for March 6th. And I will now let John Moffness speak a little bit about it, and also Richard Cano. And then once they speak, we'll be able to answer questions.
Good morning. I'm John Moffness, the contracting administrator. As far as for the solicitation is concerned, Mr. Watson has already said that it's going to be released, and we have a pre-bid meeting scheduled for next month, and this solicitation will be for 30 days, and it will, or possibly more than 30 days. It'll end on March 31st. So the bids are expected to be turned in by March 31st. It is for 12 megawatts, and I'll leave the technical portion to Mr. Richard Cano. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moffness. Mr. Cano, press once it turns red, you are on.
The reason why we want temporary power again, because currently our power plant one has only 19 megawatt capacity. There are two engines are down now. Number one is ongoing maintenance, and number 6 is waiting for foundation repair, and waiting for the CPUs to approve for the contract repair of the foundation. And the rest of the plants also needs more parts, as of even the current power plant one now. In 2022, Mitsubishi, who is the manufacturer of the engine, cannot provide most of the parts now. They said we cannot provide parts because most of the parts manufacturer are already closed down. So it's difficult for us to maintain this engine now because of inability to get parts, and our engine is already beyond service life. We need new engines, need new power plant. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cano. As you were saying it, the members are writing it down. So, any other panel? Go ahead, Mr. Lai.
I would like to add that although Richard did say that we need new engines, we need a new power plant, that's been known heavily since the last 10 years. However, the staff at the power plant, they do an amazing job at keeping those engines alive, as old as they are, and honestly running even more efficient than a Greco. So it's beneficial to keep our engines up and running because they are more efficient. But the cost to keep them running is extraordinarily high. And rather than buying new engines, we're putting it into parts that we know are going to break down and wear out in 3 years again, 2, 3 years, maybe less. And the time that it takes to get these parts customized so that it fits our engines is like a year and a half to 2 years out. So we're ordering parts today for 2 years when really we should be looking at putting up new engines in 2 years. So we tried to do that recently and it didn't pan out. As I think you've heard, we had a protest on that bid, but we're trying to get there so that we could also put less concentration on putting out the fires at the power plant, for example, um, and concentrate on the renewables that we need to put in, so that we could not just save in costs, but if the fuel cost goes down, then the customers will feel it because the fuel cost the FAC rate would also should be less on them. So it's a catch to which do you go for first? We have to focus on the power plant because that's our source right now. We can't ignore it at all. And so everybody's huffing and puffing about getting renewables going. As much as we're trying to get that going, our monies are going into the power plant, trying to get as much as we can to keep these engines up and running. So I just thought I'd give you the history. And because the engines are down and it takes, like, some of them are ready to go back up, they just need their parts, right, Richard? The overhauls being done by our own staff. They've mastered these engines themselves, just working on it. But if they don't have the replacement parts in yet, so it sits idle for a while, which is why we then need a Greco, because we don't have the capacity to keep the island on. And so a Greco subsidizes for the shortfall while the engines are down. So I wanted to just give you that history.
Thank you, Mr. Lai, for that explanation. And primarily not only for the members but also for the viewing public, no, to really understand the magnitude of the day-to-day challenges. And yeah, we can all say renewable energy and all that, but there's that cost that comes along with it. So we're going to continue asking, these kinds of questions until such time that really the cost of paying, to run the power is lower than where it is today. So, but I appreciate the information. Before I pose my question, I think I see Senator Cruz raised his hand. Go ahead, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask how old is that engine?
More than 20 years. 1979 was the.
Because I was wondering, the manufacturer of the parts is closed down.
Uh,
You don't have any like plan of supply for short term, long term to be
With,
able to replace broken parts?
the engine is designed by man and it's made by Mitsubishi. So meaning when they made the engine, there are some parts were modified by Mitsubishi, but its design is man. So some parts can be obtained from Mitsubishi, some parts can be obtained in man. But as I said, 2022, Mitsubishi said they could not anymore supply most of the parts.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
understand.
difficult for us to really to get parts. What we're doing is just re-engineer some of the parts. We reuse, we rebuild. That's all what we can do, and we are very thankful for our crew that really help us our plant ongoing.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, we have this engine. We have to have a supply to be able, when breakdown comes, you replace. But if you wait until it's broken and you don't know whether the company is going to shut down, then this is what we're encountering, right? Is you cannot order the parts because that manufacturer or that company shut down, right? That's what you said earlier. All I'm saying is, we don't have this kind of plan that to have a power supply, because this is most common breakdown in the engine that you can be able to replace. Other than, because if all those engines should break down and it's the same company, Japan's gonna have problem.
we already ordered some of the parts, but ever since, and there's even pending parts, and also the our budget, because very costly to get that part. Just one piston alone, it will cost 100,000. I have to replace 18 piston for one engine,
Yeah,
and it will take us like 2 years
I
or a
understand.
year.
I understand
get
that
the
it's gonna
parts.
cost a lot because parts are very expensive. But all I'm saying is to have a supply to be able, because if we're thinking about very expensive and then here comes the situation, how are you going to address that other than going back to Agweco? And then I want to ask how much is going to cost to go with Agweco?
Yeah, the cost to go with the Greco is budgeted at $4.5 million. And to speak on the parts for the existing engine, that's 45 years old. You know, that's almost like trying to find parts for a Studebaker today. You know, they quit making them at factories. They also quit making the parts for those.
So, because that is very old. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Why we're not getting a new engine to avoid that?
Yeah, we tried, and we ordered, or we went through the bid process and all the way to award the contract, and it was protested. Protested means that stops all progress. And we went to CPUC to get them to approve of us to go forward with the purchase, and they denied it. They kept tabling it. This would have delayed it 3 to 5 years until it got to the Superior Court to make that. So we ended up canceling the RFP, and now we will have to go out again for a bid, and with the chance that now the cost is going to be greater because the price is going up, and especially if the tariffs go into place, that could add another 25% to our cost. And we won't see this money, the $4.5 billion, that's not going into a new generator. As if we would have been able to proceed and purchase the 2 engines for Saipan and 1 for Rota, they'd already be on order, being manufactured, and we'd would have those new engines to bring online, and that would limit how much we would have to lease the power. But that wasn't the direction CPUC chose for us to go. They didn't want to take the risk of a protest.
Thank you, Director, for that information, and I hope this time it's gonna go through, and I hope that it's not gonna increase the rate for the consumers. And I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do, but it's just a simple common sense that I'm saying that, you know, if we get that, we have to be able to have a supply of parts that in the event that engine should break down, we have the necessary parts to address it very, you know, in a very expeditious manner to avoid the general public not having the, you know, the necessary services on the island. And I remember back then when there's a ration on EV power and water, and we don't want to go back to that situation. And I thank you for your understanding and patience, and let's move forward and make this thing happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Associates Masi, Senator Cruz, Chair recognizes Senator Manny Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Cano, for your comments earlier. Since Mitsubishi, there's a difficulty with the suppliers. How many machinists does CUC have? Because I imagine you're going to have to fabricate or machine a lot of these parts? Or is it contractors?
No, in our place, our plant has 2 machinists.
Okay. Hoping they have good metal lathe and milling machines and CNCs.
Well, in fact, we manufactured our machines to cut some of the engine blocks and the cylinder heads, because it's difficult for us to get a bigger machine. So we did our own re-engineered machine. Thank you.
Chair, I think we need a resolution for CUC machinists. But given the challenges of the RFP, and I just wanted to ask a question because the presentation earlier by GHD, there are several options there. So hopefully we can get through one of them to expedite the purchase of new equipment, even if it's through public-private partnership but given the fact that our engines are located in lower base at an old seaplane ramp, this is also an opportunity to move it to higher ground in case of natural disaster or something, and maybe even instead of one big vendor to supply bigger engines, has the utilities thought of maybe smaller engines which are cheaper or more affordable and positioning them closer to the source? Or I mean, you guys are the experts when it comes to that. Is there any way to go around that to prevent like what happened with the protests? Because like with procurement, sometimes if it's not a big contract, you can spread it out and maybe get through where you need to go quicker.
Yeah, we were pursuing smaller engines, 3 megawatt, but that's still over $3 million. For the 2 engines in Saipan and 1 in Rota, we're looking at 10 million. And, that still follows all the procurement regulations and approval by CPUC. So we're still have that challenge. We are looking at public-private partnerships, and that funding would come from the contractor or the private side. We're also looking at the Department of Energy to provide a loan, a line of credit over 30 years. That would help spread the cost out over 30 years. And with a lower interest rate, that too will have to be approved by the Senate and legislature for us to pursue that type of loan. So we're, it's good that we're having this meeting now. So you know that will be coming in the near future. So.
And please provide your wish list. The CPA owe CUC any money? Like the Commonwealth Port Authority? Or is it the other way around?
Just their utilities, which they're reconciling it at this time.
Okay. They have some nice bunkers from World War II, like big block types. Maybe they can donate it to put some smaller engines in there. Sorry, just for jokes. Thank you.
You back. Thank you, Senator Castro. I want to give an opportunity to Vice Chair, Senator Calvo. Are you online? Okay, I believe he's not unable to log in. I do want to ask, staying in the context of just for informational purposes, Mr. Watson, when you mention about protests? What's the timetable? I mean, can you just take us through the time when you announced for the procurement of the engine? Fast forward to today, so that the viewing public can understand the time frame as to the efforts by CUC to levelize the power output, power generation, and by way of doing that is the procurement of new engines. Fast forward to what you just disclosed earlier about a possible rebid or re-announcement.
Yes, we initially put the bid out more than a year ago. And the company has the right to protest it within the 30 days of the bids receiving, which they did. They met all the timeline and deadlines to enter into a protest. And then it goes through the appeal to the executive director first, and then I would rule on it. And then after they get to appeal it to at that time was the board, and now will be a hearing committee for hearing protests. So then it can go to the Superior Court and then to the Supreme Court. So over a year passed before we canceled the RFP. It really, each part of the protest, there can be a series of questions and tie in our staff time with both coming from the protester as well as CPUC, took hours upon hours that accumulated to weeks of staff time to answer the questions. And that was made it even more inefficient for them to do their normal day-to-day operations. So yeah, a year plus. So we're trying to do some modifications on the procurement regulations. That's going to the board for approval, and based on the Attorney General's recommendation to help us streamline the process.
Okay. Are you at liberty to share in particular what the contentious aspect of the bid, or?
What's that question?
I mean, when there's a protest, that means there's a concern with the manner in which it was rolled out, or is there a concern with the elemental part of the bid?
Yeah, overall on the procurement regulations, we've even had a concern by EPA, who put it on the stipulated order to streamline the procurement process. So we, as our staff, have been working on procurement regulations to help streamline it for several years now. And now it's completed and going to the board for final approval tomorrow. And then it will go to the public for propagation before it becomes law or regulatory regulations for the procurement process. So it is available for the public.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I was hoping that you can really state what particular. I mean, I'm sure it's multitude, right? I'm hoping it's not a multiple concerns, because that would be. I mean, I'm not going to speak for you, but like, what are the elements that triggered the anti-RFP party? And anybody can chime in. I'm sorry.
The protest was down. What they protested was the language written for Tier 4 certification, which is EPA air emissions. And in our RFP, the what was written was that a certificate would be provided. However, all the bidders could meet the tier 4, and on the ranking panel and the scoring criteria, the tier 4 was not part of the ranking because all of them met tier 4. The protesting bidder had an expired certificate that was provided, and the others didn't have a certificate because the engines had not been built yet. So, but they provided data and information that showing that they can or could meet the tier 4 EPA air emissions requirement when delivered and commission of the engine. They would each be able to meet the tier 4. But that was a sole part of the protest. And whether it held merit or not, that would have been, I didn't think it held merit. And so I denied the protest, and then it went to the next appeal, and it would have gone further until it would have been ruled at the Supreme Court, which would have been taken years. Because, that is a problem with protest. If they are unhappy that they didn't get the bid, they have that avenue to tie us up in the court system and prevent us from purchasing what needs to be purchased and to provide CNMI with the power.
Thank you, Mr. Watson, and I'm going to pay attention of what you just said because kind of lost you there a little bit, but a lot of technical words. But nevertheless, again, I'm asking this question because for the viewing public to understand the time frame it's taking the entity to get to be procuring an equipment or a piece of power generator to stabilize the output of power generation. But I understand that you have to go through that motion. I see Mr. Lahi is raising her hand. Go ahead.
Just to simplify it, the original RFP that went out for the purchase of the engines was we were trying to avoid an extensive renewal of like an IPP, a Greco, because we'd rather use the funding for Greco to pay for engines. And so that's when we initiated that in October of 2023. The board had approved an emergency procurement so that we could get the engines in on time. And then that didn't fall through because the budget was exceeded by 14 million above what we budgeted for. So we did another process and allowed additional time for the bidders to submit their proposals, because I guess that was one of the shortfalls, was that some of them were asking for extensions. And so in the second round is where we awarded what we felt was the most responsive, but the protest came back that they felt they were more responsive and called out the other bid, that the other bid was not compliant with the tier 4, which is a requirement that we had. And so that's how the protests initiated and dragged on longer, because we were under the impression that we could proceed. The board had then approved for us to proceed and let the protests proceed as well, but proceed with the purchase, because we already passed our deadline, our timeline of preventing to have to contract another IPP. But it would be better to contract an extension or a 5-month or 6-month than a 2-3 years. So what happened was we were hoping CPUC would hear our case out and approve it. Unfortunately, that's not the route they took, and in fact told us that go ahead and overhaul your engines and renew a Greco, which I feel like was not the best use of our money at the time. So, but that's what we have to deal with now because we're not the final say in what we can do with the utility. And so that's where it came out. That's where we're at right now.
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Any member would oppose their question to Senator Castro?
I just want to commend CUC for the procurement regulations. I know Chairwoman Janice, back when she was dean, we had the same problem at NMC with procurement, and the college fixed its regulation. A lot of times, agencies are following the central government's procurement regulations. They mirror it, and in the case of utilities, which have bigger procurement, you know, I think you guys are in the right direction by modifying, because emergencies come about and things as little as petty cash, you know, we might need to up that number for, especially when your pistons are very expensive. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Castro. And as I was listening to the line of questioning and the response, and we're almost covering number 5 as well. It almost appears, right? So I'm gonna thank you for covering both items. But I do have one more, maybe a couple more questions, more on the Mr. Cano's statements earlier. Again, for the viewing public to hear the day-to-day operations of your power generation and the maintenance, the matter of which you covered on the parts, that it's obsolete and they no longer can provide that. Certainly, it's commendable on how you and your crew were able to overcome that and continue to provide. With regards to, can someone talk about the compaction test that you guys are now waiting for the base of the new? Can someone talk along that? I kind of heard that earlier. Like you're waiting for the foundation. Can you elaborate on that? What are you referring to basically?
It's about foundation repair of engine number 6. It's down now.
So engine number 6 is how many megawatt?
The rated capacity is 13, but we're putting out 9 to 10 megawatt.
So it's been offline
Offline.
for how many months?
5 months now.
5 months. And so what is the issue with the foundation?
Broken foundation and broken foundation bolts and cracked foundations.
Okay. Is there, and I'm gonna ask further, is there a suspicion as to why it's cracking, or with your geotechnical folks and the engineers?
According to the analysis, it's about the design of the foundation bolts.
Okay, it's not
the way it's been on the strength of the foundation. I mean the foundation bolts.
Okay.
So they redesigned. There are 4 foundation bolts been repaired already. I mean foundation of number 1, number 2, number 5, and number 7. They've been repaired, and they re-engineered the foundation bolts, higher strength foundation bolts that they put.
Okay, so Mr. Cano, just for the information for the viewing public, so the one that has been addressed, the foundation, or did you say power plant 6 or
Power plant number 6.
number
engine.
6? Okay, number 6 engine. When was the last time that we have an issue with the foundation?
Similar. That was 2023.
No, but
24.
so prior to that, when did we ever have any issue, like 1980, 1990?
Yes, we did.
When was it? Do you recall?
I'm not.
20 years ago? 15 years ago?
Maybe more than 10 years ago.
Okay.
Most of the engines have problems with the foundation bolts.
Okay.
So Mitsubishi and MAN bid on it on repair, temporary repair for just replacing the broken bolts, but doesn't work. So we end up replacing all the bolts.
When you say boards, are you talking about the?
They are foundation bolts of the
Okay.
engine.
Yeah, forgive my lack of technical one, but the reason why I asked that, because are we gonna be in the business of every 10 years we have to visit the foundation of these engines, or should we, as what was mentioned earlier by I think Senator Castro, of potentially looking at other areas where there's more stable ground, so that we don't have to deal with the possible every decade. We have to, unless it's typical of a power generation of that size, and maybe Mr. Watson can chime in on that. But I guess the reason why I'm asking is, so no matter how new the engine is, if you go back to that same foundation board or that same area, we're going to be probably running into the same situation again of addressing a foundation, which we can actually avoid if we place it on a more stable, maybe more coral or a higher ground.
Yeah, well, these engines have held up for 45 years. So over, with stress and fatigue and age, the foundation does crack, just like even on higher ground, the vibration and all could happen. The repair that Richard was referring to, when it was repaired in 2023 or 2024, they only replaced maybe a dozen bolts or less. However, there's about 62 bolts. So just repairing a few wasn't the way to go. They have done other engines where the method that Richard is proposing is to replace all of them and use a special epoxy to build up the foundation. Those have held up for years, and so that's the what we're pursuing now, is to utilize the contractor who's done the proven repairs that have proven to work, and that we have took to CPUC for their approval for a sole source, and that is going out for this contract.
Thank you. Before I recognize any further comments or members, can we take a 3-minute break or 3 to 5 minute break, please? Thank you. We left off with the response from Mr. Cano and Mr. Watson with regards to the foundation issue. Pretty much, basically, it embodies the item number 5 of the order. I mean, of the challenges associated with CUC power generation. Mr. Watson, sticking with the protests, did this affect the generator need for Rhoda as well?
Yes, it did.
So, okay. So, for the purpose of timeline, what would? Okay, so it hasn't been adjudicated yet. Are we gonna be doing another announcement? Bid? Is that what we're hearing?
Yes, we will be doing another bid once we get the procurement regulations changed. So otherwise, we would be going down the same path with
Okay.
the chance of protests very strong.
Okay, so and that, if my recollection serves me right, it is before CPUC, correct, for the regulation change?
No, right now it will be the CUC board, which is tomorrow's meeting. And we don't foresee any issues. And then it will go to propagation.
It's promulgation, needing another 30 days, perhaps.
Yes, 30 or 45 days.
Okay, so just for the purpose of the discussion, so 45 days, and then it's adopted, and then day number 47, you're gonna announce again the bid. Is that how it is?
Yes.
Okay, so once you announce on day 47, what's the typical time of bid announcement for procurement of power generation or a power generator?
We will announce it for 30 days, and then we'll receive the bids. That will be reviewed by the panel. Once we award a contract, it's estimated to be about 350 days once the order is placed to commission the generator.
Okay, but the technical requirements of the size of the power generator remains the same.
Yes.
Okay, so you're just gonna kind of basically take the same explanation, right, about your requirement.
What was that
No, I
question?
mean, sans the protests, other than the protested.
Right.
conditions,
That's
so
the
just
timeline without protest.
Okay,
If
so
we
I heard.
protest, will slow it down.
So I heard 45 days. So that takes up from today, for example, 45 today is about April, right?
Yes.
So another 30 to 45 days for announcement
Yes,
for bid.
that's
So that's about 45, and 45 is what?
90 days.
90 days. So then another 350 days for, is that what you said? 350 days for the actual. So that
Manufacturer.
okay, so you grant the winning bid at day 92, for example.
Yes,
So you're gonna count from that 350 days ahead.
that's correct.
So it's clearly like it's gonna be about a year and a half almost, or a year and 3 months.
Yes, that's correct.
So that kind of gave the need for the consideration of the announcement come March or May for the correct.
Those are very strict timelines. I think it would take a lot longer
Yeah.
because installing it also here
Sure.
would take additional time. But it's expected maybe up and running within 2 years of the awarding.
Yeah. So thank you for the clarification.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to put it in real numbers, no,
Yeah,
for the people that are watching, so
Yes.
that they can understand the.
So realistically, 2
Yeah.
years is probably a better number to provide.
Okay. I'm a little bit concerned about how can we bifurcate the process of which to tend to the, not that it's not important in SAPAN, but I'm hearing a different concern on Rhoda. Can you share to the committee what are the backup plans in the event?
Yeah, right now we have two engines operating in Rhoda, one online and the others as a standby. And we're working on a third engine. The third engine we had overhauled, and upon startup and commissioning, it caught fire, unfortunately. And so now we have assessed the damages and determined that we can still rebuild it we'll have to order the parts and that were damaged from the fire and then rebuild that. So that will buy us some time rebuilding the existing engines that are there to hopefully get us through to until we can replace the new one. We also are pursuing the renewable energy in Rota as well as Tanya and Saipan. So
Okay, thank you, Mr. Watson. I have a couple more, but I want to yield to the members to if they have any comments or questions. Senator Castro.
I just hope that when we do our procurement, because government has a tendency to go with the cheapest or most affordable, but I hope that given all the complexities with our engines, that we take a deeper look into like supply chain and other factors. So our engine was it's an old engine, right? It was MAN and Mitsubishi components, and MAN is one of the top manufacturers, but given our proximity to like South Korea and parts availability, Doosan is also another. And I don't know if that's just because some of these funding sources are all federal, but if we can leverage local resources to purchase some engines to kind of have some redundancy in place, right? Like when one fails, we're not stuck with one manufacturer, and so just some food for thought. Thank you.
Senator Castro, Senator Cruz, you have any before I negative? Okay, Mr. Lai.
Before we forget, we actually plan to schedule a tour, and the director wanted to invite the legislature, House and Senate, and we could get a big bus and go through the facilities that would interest you guys to take a look at our power plant, including and maybe even some of the progress that we've made over time with the stipulated orders. I think EPA and Judge Carter has been very pleased with the progress we've made. There still continues to be works and deficiencies that we need to rectify. They have been generous giving us grants. EPA has. I think for 2025, their budget was slashed and maybe even slashed even more. So that's where we have concerns now with funding. So wanted to let you know that we'll be scheduling that soon. And I get nods that you would want to take part in it, and the staff are welcome to join too.
Absolutely. Then that's great. Thank you for informing us, and we'll certainly be interested to tour the facility and put a visual to what you guys are just saying up here too. So kind of lost a better grip and understanding. So I think that pretty much wraps up our meeting for today and for this particular portion of the informational hearing. What typically would happen is we're gonna put this into a report to report to the full board of the Senate, and then it's a good meeting the last couple of days, and a lot of information that we've learned and we've heard to be updated not necessarily just us here in the Senate, but especially the people, the public. I want to also mention that if there's any like unsolicited proposals for power generation folks that are visiting your offices, I'm sure that you guys have made that vetting as well and continue looking forward to, because the ultimate goal here is, other than the stable power generation, is cost. And I couldn't help but to think that the fuel really is the biggest thing here. And I'm also sensitive with the fact that the business side of things that you guys have to, maintain as you need to do the O&Ms, the operations and maintenance, and then along that you have to pay for your staff, you have to pay for obligations, and then you have to pay for Mr. Cano and his team to make sure that the power remains on. And as you notice, this informational hearing is only focused on power, because that seems to be among other things. But just wanted to go right ahead and inform you guys that there may be another one in the offing for the other elements that you guys oversee, water and I believe sewer. So please be on the lookout for that. And this is actually a very good platform, because it allows everyone to get an understanding. At any time that there is, can somebody talk on the hard dates of that IRP, the feasibility study? I know they presented it on the 20th, but just to kind of reiterate the dates.
Yes, we have one final stakeholders meeting, and then they will be finished with the IRP with their report by the end of March or 1st of April. So
Of which the time when you're going to bring it to the full board for adaptation to adopt it.
then the IRP, and then we will we are already looking at developing an RFP for renewable power on Rota, Tenya, and Saipan. We are also putting in for a federal grant funding for a solar farm with battery storage in Rota as well, for possible funding of up to, I believe, $2.5 million. But that's, not, grants are never guaranteed. So we're also pursuing the public-private partnership in a parallel track.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Lai, did you want to say something? Madam Chair? Mr. Muffness? Mr. Cano? Anybody else that want to say anything before I call this session to adjournment? Senator Cruz, I recognize.
Thank you, Chairman. I know we're done with our agenda, but I just want to ask, because someone brought to my attention, how much you guys charging for residential and commercial for reconnection fee?
The reconnection fee is the same for residential and commercial at $60.
Because
Per meter.
we have to follow the law, because we have a law of
Yes, we do.
it's 18 Public Law 1839. We have to follow that, because we changed that to from 60 to 25 for residential and 75 for commercial.
I
Because there's a complaint come to my attention that why they're charging them a different rate. It's not you guys not following
I
the.
believe the latest law reduced it to $60 for residential.
No, it's the latest is 18. What law is that? Because the latest is 1839.
1839.
Public Law 1839. That's
I'll
from
get back
six-
to you on what law we're following, but it
Huh?
was put into the CPUC after that public law, and so that's the same one we're following, is the $60 reconnection fee.
It was $60, then it was changed to 25
25.
for residential.
Okay.
and then commercial is 75.
I'm not aware of this 1839.
Yes. And
Okay.
if it's disconnected both at the same time, it's still $25 for residential.
That's in this 1839. Okay.
Can you
When was this
can you look into
passed?
that, because people comes to us and not everybody is aware of this public law, so we have to follow the law. Thank you.
Okay. We'll if we are in error, we'll rectify this. Yes. I will let you know. We'll update you.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Cruz. With that, I will now entertain a motion to adjourn this informational hearing.
Motion for adjournment.
Motion offered by Senator Castro for adjournment, seconded by Senator Cruz. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn this session, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. The Public Utilities, Transportation, and Communications informational hearing on CUC is hereby adjourned.